Hello and welcome to WHBO Radio. Yep, you guessed it. Yeah, that's My Baby by Charles Coon. And here we are talking about the 1920s and what a great decade it has been for us. To start out with, we will be talking about each major event of the 1920s and how it was a major event and how it would relate to radio in future days. So the first event which we will be talking about is the American Professional Football League, formed in 1920 with Jim Thorpe as its president and 11 teams. It would change its name to the National Football League in 1922.
On August 18, 1920, women are given the right to vote, and the 19th Amendment of the United States Constitution grants universal women's suffrage, also known as the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, in recognition for her important campaign to win the right to vote.
November 1920. The landslide victory for Warren G. Harding in both the Electoral College and popular vote returns the Republican Party to the White House. Harding gained over 16 million popular votes and won the electoral contest with a 404 to 127 landslide. This was the first election in which women had the right to vote.
Now on 1921, on July 2nd, 1921, a congressional resolution by both houses is signed by Warren G. Harding declaring peace in World War I hostilities with Germany, Austria, and Hungary. The treaty would be executed 1 month later.
Then, on February 6, 1922, the Armaments Congress ends. It would lead to an agreement, the Five-Power Disarmament Treaty, between the major world powers of the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Japan, and the United States, to limit naval construction, outlaw poison gas, restrict submarine attacks on the merchant fleets, and respect China's sovereignty.
Now on April 7, 1922, the Teapot Dome scandal begins, and the U.S. Secretary of the Interior releases Navy oil grounds to the Teapot Oil Reserves based in Wyoming.
Now moving on to 1923. In April 1923, the first sound of a film motion picture, phono film, is shown in the Rivoli Theater in New York City by Lee D. Forbes.
On August 2nd, 1923, President Warren G. Harding dies in office after becoming ill following a trip to Alaska.
Now we have a short commercial break.
And now a message from our sponsor. Ladies, tired of drying your hair with the same old vacuum cleaner? Try Avon Shave brand new Beauty Locks portable hair dryer. It's smaller, it's faster, it's guaranteed to give you the hair you've always wanted in half the time. Beauty Locks is delicate and dainty, just like you. The dryer weighs only a pound and easily fits in your hand. Now that's beauty and convenience. With a speedy motor that will dry your hair in as little as 25 minutes, you can get gorgeous hair without falling behind schedule. Don't worry about the little ones or that pie in the oven. Thanks to an extra-long extension cord, you can move around while primping your locks. Forget those long trips to the salon and no more waiting for hours under monster machines. Avon Shea gives you an easy and speedy hairdo that will blow your man away. Get it now at your nearest Macy's.
What a great hair dryer advertisement, folks. Now, we're talking about January 25th, 1924. The first Winter Olympic Games are held in the French Alps in Chamonix, France, where 16 nations sent athletes to participate. Norway, with 4 gold medals and 18 medals total, won in both categories. The Winter Olympic Games have continued to go through the 1920s.
On June 15, 1924, all Indians were designated citizens by legislation passed in the U.S. Congress and signed by President Calvin Coolidge. The Indian Citizenship Act granted the right to all Native Americans that have been born in the territory of the United States.
Then, on May 10, 1924, J. Edgar Hoover is appointed to lead the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI. On November 1924, Calvin Coolidge won his first election as president, retaining the White House for the Republican Party over his Democratic foe, John W. Davis, and Progressive Party candidate, Robert M. La Follette. The electoral margin was 382 to 136 to 13.
On January 5, 1925, Nellie Taylor Ross is inaugurated as the first woman governor of the United States in Wyoming.
Then, on July 10, 1924, the Scopes trial or monkey trial begins and will later convict John T. Scopes of teaching Charles Darwin's evolutionary theory at a Dayton, Tennessee high school, which violated Tennessee law. He was then fined $100 for the charge.
On May 20th, 1927, Charles Lindbergh leaves Roosevelt Field, New York on the first non-stop transatlantic flight in history. He would reach Paris in 33 and 1/2 hours later. in the spirit of St. Louis his aircraft. A ticker tape parade will be held in New York City after his return on June 13th of the same year.
Then, on August 10, 1927, work on the gigantic sculpture of Mount Rushmore began. Sculptor Gutzon Borglum would complete the task of chiseling the busts of 4 presidents.
Television begins to emerge in America, thanks to American inventor Philo Taylor Farnsworth, who invented a complete electronic television system with its first success in 1927.
Then, in 1928, on June 17th, Amelia Earhart becomes the first woman to fly over the Atlantic Ocean.
On November 6, 1928, Herbert Hoover wins election as President of the United States with an electoral college victory 444-87 over his Democratic candidate Alfred E. Smith, the Catholic governor of New York.
Then, on December 21st of the same year, 1928, the United States Congress approved the construction of Boulder, which was later named the Hoover Dam.
On February 14, 1929, in Chicago, Illinois, gangsters working for Al Capone killed 7 of their rivals in the act known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And now for a message from our sponsors. Parents, are you tired of thumb sucking? Well, buy Baby Alice Thumb Guard. It's safe, sanitary, and comfortable. Made of Monel metal wire. It's inexpensive and approved by leading baby specialists. Sold by surgical dealers, department stores, and baby stores everywhere. Stop the thumb sucking.
Now moving on to the lead story of how the radio affected this decade. The radio is a product as much of technology as of human imagination. For the first point, licensed radio broadcasting. Conrad's company, Westinghouse, asks him to go on the air on a regular basis to send out music, and they'll send radios for the service. They apply for commercial radio license, and in November 1920, KDKA goes on the air to broadcast the election returns of the Hardin-Cox presidential contest. Westinghouse takes out ads in the newspaper advertising radios for sale to the home of the consumer. The station receives the first official government license. The dark years of the war give way to peace and prosperity. Then, by the end of 1922, over 500 stations were in operation.
Second point is the broadcasting's decade. Within a few years, there were hundreds of stations entertaining thousands of people who buy or build their own receivers, mostly crystal sets with earphones. Under a government-sanctioned agreement, the Radio Corporation, RCA, is formed to manage the patents for the technology of the receiver and the transmitter. General Electric and Westinghouse are allowed to make receivers. Western Electric is allowed to build transmitters, and AT&T is allowed to engage in toll broadcasting. Then in 1926, the National Broadcasting Company, the first continent-wide network, was created.
The third point, technology. The decade begins with people listening to homemade crystal sets with headphones, progresses to battery-operated sets with dozens of dials, and a horn speaker to electric console radios designed as fine furniture, single knob tuning, and loudspeakers.
The fourth point, advertising. By 1923, WEAF in New York accepts the first radio ad. Because the station was owned by AT&T, it is the only station allowed to engage in toll broadcasting under the RCA agreements. Other stations are already advertising because no one can stop them. Many stations are owned by businesses, and their only reason for broadcasting is to sell something. 1927, Congress has limited the number of stations and parceled out wavelengths to prevent interference.
The fifth point, networks, have broken the AT&T monopoly on chain broadcasting. NBC and CBS are formed as the first radio networks by the late 1920s.
The sixth point, regulation. The first radio dial is filled with hundreds of poorly regulated transmitters, many interfering with each other to the point where no one can get clear reception. The Federal Radio Commission is formed, and the Radio Act of 1927 is passed, which reassigns stations to clearer frequencies, and for the first time makes radio stations operate in public interest, convenience, and necessity.
And now a final word from our sponsors. After every meal, Wrigley's Nips. The new candy coating gum delights young and old. It melts in your mouth, and the gum in the center remains to aid digestion, brighten teeth, and soothe mouth and throat. There are other Wrigley friends to choose from too. Wrigley's Spearmint, Double Mint, and Juicy Fruit.